Here you can see, of course, what that artisanal mining opens up for us. It's a bit of proof, essentially, that people are making money off selling gold in those areas. So obviously that's a really good place to start looking. So here's what that's led to. It's a predictive vein model. Of course, we'll have certain areas where we are confident that the mineralization falls within. We expect the drill to start spinning this month. Drill results to hit the market next month in March. We're going to have a transformative first half of the year here as the drill bit spins.
All right, today we have a discussion with Jaap Verbaas, the CEO of Miata Metals, a gold explorer in Suriname with plenty of news flow and catalysts on the horizon due to their drilling campaign starting up as we speak. Jaap, great to have you on the channel. Welcome, thanks for swinging by. Perhaps we can start off with a short and sweet high-level overview of your company to start off with.
Sure, thanks Dan. Pleasure to be here. So we are, as Miata Metals, we listed last year, 2023. And then started to hunt for projects in Suriname over the course of 2024. Suriname as a country is obviously generating a lot of excitement for investors right now because of favorable mining laws that allow companies to really ramp up activities very quick. In the case of exploration success, we've seen a couple of those stories in recent times. We are currently working Sela Creek. Sela Creek is a 215 square kilometer concession that has a large amount of artisanal mining activity on it. You can see that activity here. And the exciting part of Suriname is that the artisanal mining activity in several regions of the country really is a proxy for what you might find there as a bigger miner. So it's one of the first things we started looking at in country when we started hunting for acquisitions. And you can see that here. There's a 16 kilometer trend of artisanal gold workings, of which about 14.5 kilometers of the trend is on our project. So we're currently building a camp. We've got a drill from Major Drilling on site. It's going to be spinning this month. We expect drill results to hit the market next month in March, and it should be really exciting times for us. So we've got about 53.4 million shares outstanding, $5.5 million in the bank, which should be able to keep us drilling for the first 10,000 meters. And so we've, obviously there's enough funds to allow us to bring the right catalysts to market. And we're really excited to get started here. So.
Thanks for that overview, Jaap. And of course, you were just in Suriname, and we'll have to talk about it in just a second as well, the current progress of the campaign, how that's ramping up. This picture that you showed also shows Founders Metals, which is, of course, another publicly listed company, currently a market cap of almost $500 million. And what's interesting is that they have significantly less artisanal mining to showcase the ore body, but they still use that method successfully to delineate quite a bit of resource.
Yeah, and I think that really shows the exploration upside still in this region, right? So, I mean, clearly the trends at Sela Creek from artisanal mining are larger, but it's not just the artisanal mining that's just it's a bit of proof essentially that people are making money off selling gold in those areas. So obviously that's a really good place to start looking. Now the scale doesn't really do it justice. You can't really showcase that scale unless you're standing in one of these pits. This single pit here is 2.7 kilometers long. So this is a substantial amount of activity as well here. And Founders has actually made some grassroots discoveries in the forested region still too. So this is a region of the world where it has raw discovery potential in many areas, and the artisanal mining activity serves as a proxy for what one might find, but it's not the only. It's not only in those regions, of course, that we can find additional upside. For example, we've got panning results in the west part of our claim, historical panning results, where we know there is, the panning results indicate there are additional zones to be found that aren't mined by the artisanal miners yet.
All right, great. Thank you for that overview. Of course, you're on the cusp of starting a drilling campaign. Before we talk about how that's going, perhaps we can go into what is really the thesis behind this drilling campaign. What are you trying to test? What are the targets you're drilling? And what are you hoping to find?
For sure. So I'm gonna just digress a little bit and go into our team for a second here. So on our team, the technical team really consists of myself. I've got a undergrad and master's from Utrecht University. Worked in Australia, mostly on orogenic gold projects, which is what we're trying to find here. And then came to Canada for a PhD. That I finished in 2017. So I've got a strong technical background. Luke Bickerton, our VP Exploration, is another PhD geologist. He's worked for Teck for several years. I've worked with the majors, worked with the juniors, has the technical background, also a really bright mind. And our most recent addition to the board of directors is Danae Vormij, who has spent her entire career working in tropical regions. Her first job was actually at the Rosebel mine in Suriname, and she has developed a method through which we can use the artisanal mining data as to complement the exploration data, and that's really what has allowed us to move towards the drilling very quickly, because essentially what we've done is taking time slices through the satellite imagery, seeing how these artisanal miners open up their mining pits and checking when they are in bedrock. So in some cases, actually, they do mine bedrock, which is rare in the region because it takes a lot of work. It means dewatering a pit and working through that really hard rock. But when they do it, then we see where they start. We see how deep they trend with those pits. We can get a sense of the strike and dip of the zones that they are mining. And so that's really a method that Danae has brought to our company, which has allowed us to build an exploration thesis that allows us to move towards the drilling right now. And we're really excited to start going. On the drill targets, here you can see, of course, what that artisanal mining opens up for us. It allows us to go look at exposed mineralized quartz veins and measure where they're trending, etc. This is low-hanging fruit in terms of drill targeting for us. And taking Danae's approach, as well as what our geologists have done on site with the sampling and structural measurements, has allowed us to move towards a 3D model of the mineralized envelopes. And I will pull that up here. This is okay. So here's what that's led to. It's a predictive vein model. We've incorporated all this exploration data in a 3D model that allows us to essentially target the envelopes of mineralization. So we have, of course, we'll have certain areas where we are confident that the mineralization falls within, and within those blocks we need to vector towards the sweet spots, if you will. So here is an example of that 3D model over Puma, and this is built of all the data that we have, so soil samples, rock samples, channel samples, structural measurements, and the artisanal mining activity over time. We've complemented all the satellite imagery with LiDAR and orthophoto, of course, and here is an example of what we call a very high priority target for the drilling. So this will, of course, be once we start drilling it, we'll know exactly how narrow or how wide the vein arrays are within that zone. So it's not as if this entire block is going to be mineralized, but it gives us a start to start drilling and start vectoring. And of course, we're targeting certain areas within this based on the artisanal mining data and the grab sampling, etc. So we've put this together for a 8-kilometer trend along site. That 8-kilometer trend I showed you in the satellite imagery. We're still building it out over other areas on the concession, and that really guides the drilling at this point. And then on a prospect scale, of course, our geologists right now are sampling. They're measuring everything around the drill pads and assessing from what drill paths we can get at the targets the best. But that really has been the approach. So over the last few months, this has come together really well before of course the drilling. We have a really good idea of the structural control. Here is that central Guyana shield shear zone. That is the controlling structural scale, crustal scale feature that also controls the mineralization to a large degree at the Nassau Project and the Jaap deposit in French Guyana. And then what we see emanating from that are these cross faults, which ultimately control where the gold fluids would have entered the system. And within those cross faults is where you'll see these certain, blocks of a certain priority, because usually the gold will enter cross faults and then from there enter certain lithologies. And those lithologies, rock types, are shown here in different colors. These are very tight folds. That is a very typical structural setting for orogenic gold deposits. Same thing here, very tight folds with the gold and artisanal mining activity focused in the center of the fold axis and along the limbs. So this has we've been piecing this together over the last few months, and we're confident about our model at this point. So that's why we're confident to have the drill start spinning, and we're planning 2.5 kilometers at Puma here, because it's an area where we're seeing both foliation parallel veining as well as tension gashes and tension veins, and both orientations are in a way that we can intersect both with the drill. So this looks to be an area where we've got very high conviction in our model and in our ability to drill the right spots.
Thanks for taking us along in that exploration thesis. Really interesting to see that modeling already in place before the drill bit has started spinning. Of course, you were just in Suriname. Drill campaign is about to start. Perhaps you can take us along how that is currently looking like, how that's standing, and how quickly we should actually expect results as investors at home.
Yeah, certainly. So all the drill gear is at site at this point. We're just putting the last few pieces in place. We expect the drill to start spinning, as I mentioned, this month, and drill results would most likely come sometime early mid-March, and from there on a rolling basis every 2 to 3 weeks, I would suspect.
Mid-March would mean a very short timeline for assays, so we aren't expecting the classic Canadian 6, 8, 10 week time frames.
Yeah, I would say 8 to 10 weeks is fast for Canadian standards from what I'm used to. That's one of the reasons we're really excited by Suriname. It's I haven't touched on that, but I'm going to flip to a different slide here. It's the really exciting bit in Suriname is that thanks to the Rosebel and Zijin, or Rosebel and Marion mines, which are run by Newmont and Zijin, there is also the Phi Lab, which is a certified lab in Suriname, and that tends to return assays in less than 2 weeks, fire assays for gold. We've seen it as fast as 3 to 4 days, so it's incredibly quick. It means we get almost, well, not immediate, but we get very quick feedback on what we're drilling, and it's important for our geologists as well, because of course they can use that data and vector into the sweet spots better that way. The other, of course, we're using major drilling. Because of the Rosebel and Marion mine, there are experienced drill crews in country. We've opted to use major to be have some momentum starting. We don't, we think it'll take additional time if we were to buy our own rig and train our own people. So working with major is going to alleviate some of that. Some of those starting inefficiencies, of course. They've drilled in this type of rock, saprolite, a lot over the past decades. And lastly, exploration and exploitation permits are a part of the concessions in Suriname. And that, again, goes into how a company can really generate momentum in country, right? Because you can Another difference between Canada and Suriname is that in Canada, in many places, you have to permit your individual drill pads, and if you do so, well, now you have targets, you get your grab samples back, and you only know what you want to be drilling after you have those back. Then you have to submit a permit for a drill pad. You run into Canadian winter, and half a year later you might have your permit, but maybe not. So it can take a long time before you can actually get to the drilling, even if you have the concession in hands or the mining claims in hands. And ultimately, that's, I think, why Suriname is getting so much attention from the international investment community right now. Because it is one of those places in the world where you can still generate momentum quickly, and in the case of drill success, you can ramp up activity, and of course you see that in the market. So as an investor, it's exciting too. And a really good example of that is Founders Metals, that has been drilling for less than 2 years now, I believe.
Yeah, hugely interesting, those quick turnaround times, of course, for the team operationally, also for investors. Quick catalyst, quick news flow, very exciting. Perhaps we can quickly touch base on artisanal miners, of course, big topic behind the exploration thesis. Behind the scenes, not in front of the camera, we had a discussion about that they're only allowed to go to a certain depth. Perhaps you can explain how that works.
Yeah, for sure. So our thesis has, from the get-go, has been, we don't want to, in this early phase of our company, there's no sense in not trying to work together. And the Sela Creek concession, another key point in that, the Sela Creek concession is mined almost exclusively by Okanisi people, which hold the traditional rights to this area. And so it's essentially been their bread and butter for the past 100 years. So we also, of course, want to have the community on side with our work. The Okanisi control all the access routes into Sela Creek, which means that you won't find many illegal Brazilian mining groups here, as opposed to at other projects in Suriname. And the way we've constructed the deal, we've essentially formalized in the option agreement that the artisanal miners that are there have the rights to keep on mining up to a depth of 30 meters, if they can mine it, of course, and we hold the rights below that. Now, in practice, mining far below the water table is pretty difficult for them, so they tend to mine to maybe 15, 20 meters depth. And so that's ultimately, it's just a natural limit almost. In cases where we were to make a grassroots discovery, we would own the rights to the whole package there, if you will. So the first 30 meters as well, and of course we're not at that point yet where we've had to truly assert that we own everything below 30 meters or whatnot. But it's a way to formalize that we want to work with the local miners. They have a lot of heavy equipment on site, of course, earth moving equipment, excavators and whatnot that have already helped us build the camp, and with certain other things. So there is no sense in us trying to send anybody away, if you will, at this point. Our goal is to make sure that the community benefits from our work. We're hiring heavily from the local communities, from the Okanisi. One thing I didn't mention is that the private company, the counterparty to our option agreement, so there's an earned 70% interest in Sela Creek, and at the same time we've entered into an option agreement for the remaining 30%. The counterparty to that option agreement is a private company in Suriname that is half owned by the Okanisi people, which means that the Okanisi, the Aukaners, will ultimately benefit from option payments as well as from an NSR in the case of mining production. So, there's a win-win scenario for both the community and us in the case of success.
Great to hear, Jaap. I think we have a great overview of Sela Creek, very exciting catalyst upcoming. Quickly touching base on the Nassau Project, second project you have in Suriname, seems to be a bit further out. Perhaps you can take us along what it is and what the priorities are currently.
The Nassau is located here. It's actually not further out in that, it's further out in terms of our work on it, but it's It's closer to Paramaribo, the capital. It's accessible by road, much easier to get to than Sela Creek. So in many ways, Nassau would be an easier asset to work. However, we don't yet have the same geological understanding of Nassau, and we don't have an option to 100% in place. So of course, consolidating ownership is a part of what we like to do on our assets. The Nassau is also 200 square kilometer package, totally within the Greenstone Belt. It's just 20 kilometers south of the Marion mine, 10 kilometers concession border to concession border. So it's very, very close. There's good grab samples, good drill results, but I think the best drill result was 338 grams a ton over 1.5 meters. But there's no clear zone where you could go yet that says, okay, well, that's a discovery. That's a zone we can extend. We know exactly how it runs in 3D. So we have to do a little bit more work there before we know fully what we have. Sela Creek ultimately will dictate, or the success at Sela Creek will dictate what we will do on Nassau. Of course, if we drill fantastic holes at Sela and it's all hands on deck there, and we expand the program, etc., then it might take us a little bit more time to get to Nassau, or we might try to extract value in another way for our shareholders. I'm not sure what that would look like yet, but it is a great project as well.
All right, thanks for that overview. Last main topic I would like to touch base on is really financials. Of course, very important for an explorer. I believe you raised $6.4 million in October 2024. Perhaps you can take us along how far that will actually take you and how the cap table is currently looking like.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're pretty happy with where we are in terms of the capital structure. We've got 53.4 million shares outstanding, 70.4 fully diluted. So really, tight vehicle for having a 70% earned interest in two big projects in Suriname. We, as you mentioned, we raised $6.5 million in October. A portion of that, of course, went to closing the transaction with 79 North, through which we've earned the 70% interest. And we've put some money to work in terms of building camp and all that. So we're currently at about $5.5 million Canadian. We believe we can drill for about $300 Canadian all in. So this is gonna allow us to drill about 10,000 meters before we'd be stretched to go back to market, and that really is another reason we're very happy to be in Suriname. It's low drill costs, and you can take your budget a long way in this part of the world. So as far as the ownership, there's a couple things that I'd like to point out. 3 of our founders are on the board of directors. So it's got a large management, insider founders, shareholders. Some people mistake founders here for founders metals. That's not the case. It's founders of the company. So 32% holding. Institutional has probably increased a little bit just because of open market activity. So really happy with that in this stage of the company already. And then this 39% retail bracket, that's really mostly what we inherited through the acquisition with 79 North. We're trading around 85 cents, $45 million market cap, which I think is partly because of the anticipation of the drilling and obviously the conviction in what our technical team has done. And we're going to have a transformative first half of the year here as the drill bit spins.
It is definitely a very exciting story, Jaap. Thank you so much for taking us through, and best of luck in this drilling campaign. Hopefully the grades are in your favor.
Thank you. Appreciate it.